So game 3 of a best of 3 is where things start getting exceptionally tense. Either player now in a position where they can advance into that winner's bracket. The winner's game, of course, where you want to be. It means that you've got the easy ride, so to speak, into the finals and the potential to advance. However, if you lose here, you have to contend with not one more best of 3, but 2, if you want to make it through. And all of the safety nets vanished. There is no second rung to drop down to if you lose after this. Only the jaws of defeat. Outer Rim, big map, should be seeing plays that do go on a bit longer, although that can not always go to plan. So let's introduce these two players. Spawning to the lower left. He won game number 1, but game number 2 just couldn't contend, going mech v mech. It's the blue Terran player, kauP. And to the top left, the red Terran, battling it back in the second game to bring us here and the ace match. Will the Panzer General take it through to the winner's game, or is he going to fall in game 3? It's GoOdy. GoOdy opening with a Rax into gas. Actually, no, that was gas into Rax, so opening up very early there with the gas. Meanwhile, over on kauP side, he did go Rax into gas, so he's going to be looking for either Reapers or a Reactor early on. Neither player being overly greedy. It's always tempting on a map like Outer Rim to just go and take the base in your base, hoping that your opponent won't do anything aggressive. But these two, being in the ace game, deciding that, no, not something that I want to risk. If I lose this, I'm in the loser's game, and that's just not where I want to be. I don't want to take any undue risks against someone who has taken a game off me. So with this, they're both going to have slightly worse economy. They're both going for the Reapers. And Reapers on Outer Rim are actually a really good decision. There's a decent amount of cliff area that you can utilize. It's a big map, so having that extra movement speed just means that scouting and just generally getting a good feel of what your opponent is doing can be helpful. And if your opponent had been greedy and gone for that CC first, then you're going to be able to punish it. Both the Reapers getting very low, both retreating away. It was neck and neck who was actually going to win that fight if it had gone to the bitter end. But by pulling back, they both know where their opponents spawn in the vertical positions because of the positioning of the Reapers and when they were coming out. And so, nothing too much to worry about. GoOdy, though, appears to have some sneaky stuff planned. He's adding in a factory super fast, and it's in a hidden position. A scan, were it to come down, would probably scan around here, maybe along here, but very unlikely to try and get vision of this area and this factory. Meanwhile, kauP, he is going for a quick expansion, but his two Reapers going to be able to thwart the little move in there from GoOdy's. The important thing, though, is that hidden factory. It is going to make a big difference if kauP doesn't scout it. He may misread precisely what GoOdy has in store. kauP, though, should comfortably take a superior economic position by having the natural CC in place earlier than that of GoOdy. If it does come down sooner, and even when it's come down later in previous games, kauP's actually managed to take the SCV lead and the economic lead anyway. This is looking good for him. But GoOdy, ready for some Banshee play, ready to harass, and ready to try and catch kauP off guard. If he can do it, it gives him a big lead and that early confidence in the game. May even getting him into a spot where he's actually basically won it. But that's all a lot of assumptions. The engineering bay is down, so missile turrets can be placed by kauP if he feels threatened by Banshee. While he hasn't seen them, he probably suspects something's up. Sees the factory, but this factory right now doesn't actually give too much of a concern. The starport, though, cannot be seen. Cloak has just begun, although it's a little bit later than immediate, so we'll add a small bump through. But it's the Reapers now that need to actually try and get some important information. They're not going to be able to, and that's going to be very frustrating for kauP. Manages to back two of them away, the other one getting picked off with only a fraction of its hit points remaining. Hellion gets one mid-air as well, which is always a nice little move. GoOdy now knows that he's got some early advantages. Although they are tiny, it's still an advantage. And more importantly, he knows that the element surprise is still in his favour. There has been no scan on this starport, and therefore these missile turrets from kauP were built blindly. But even blindly built missile turrets defend against Banshees. And so again we're seeing an example of kauP preferring to be safe as opposed to taking little shortcuts to try and get a big lead. And that to me signals a player who is confident in the later game that he can win long term. And it makes sense because game 1 was a long game of 30 minutes and he was able to be victorious. Whereas in the shorter game where he did take some risks, didn't pay off for him. Banshee now coming through. Gonna see that missile turret and be a little bit scared of it. Outranges the Banshee, and the Banshee can look to get some damage done, but without either of these gases taken, can't even pick off SCVs out of position. Cloak is finished. Moving forward, scans are not available as of yet, so these Marines powerless to stop the Banshee. The starport also not down, so we're not going to be seeing any Ravens yet. And this leaves the Banshee in a nice spot where it can just slowly pick away. Has to be careful though, getting very close to the detection range of that missile turret, but skirting around the edge of it, baiting a couple of stims out of the Marines. GoOdy also taking a page out of kauP's book. Picks up that ninja expansion down to the bottom right. And this, on a map so large, is very unlikely to get scouted, specifically in these spawn positions. If they were in cross spawn, it's possible it would get scouted just because of a drop pathing, but not going to be able to get achieved. kauP getting fed up with that Banshee, scans to confirm the kill on it, always nice. But GoOdy, he did a decent amount with that. Only 2 workers killed, but he got a full scout of what his opponent was doing and kept his opponent sitting back at home defensive. And whenever you keep your opponent back at home defensive, you prevent them from being able to apply any pressure of their own at this early stage, any harassment, and so you can be left to your own devices. And that's always what you want as a player, is that while you're being the aggressor and keeping your opponent on their back foot, you know without a shadow of a doubt that you are in control of that game. And once you're in control, you know that, hey, you can take this game wherever you want it. kauP though, looking to bring back that control with the double medevac drop. GoOdy does have a Banshee coming in, and if GoOdy is wise, which of course GoOdy is, he's going to sit here and think, there were a lot more Marines when my Banshee was last in there, and only more time has gone by. So either my opponent has killed them all off, or perhaps they are headed towards my base in some form or another to kill me. GoOdy, hopefully identifying that, will need to put up some defences, but in come those medevacs. Handful of units in a defensive spot, but the low tank count is spread very thin. 3rd CC that was in construction for GoOdy, or should I say 4th because of the ninja base, gets taken down without the cancel. 400 mils worth of damage done to GoOdy there, and a nice win for kauP. Overall, APMs, as we'd expected, GoOdy's relatively low at 121, and that really is because of his super turtle strategy where he just likes sitting back, getting up into a good position, no rush or hurry about him. kauP on the other hand though, continuing on with these drop plays, gonna have to contend with a lone missile turret now. Doesn't move in because while the drop could go down, a retreat wouldn't be available. It'd be a big commitment, and that's not something that kauP is ready for at the moment. GoOdy, with the hidden base down to the bottom right, has been muling it heavily, and this is one way which very, very observant players will know that there's a hidden base somewhere. If scans come down on the 2 mineral fields and they don't see any mules and they haven't seen any scans, they're going to go, hang on, you've got energy somewhere, or you've spent energy somewhere. Either you got yourself supply blocked and had to cool down supply, or you've got a hidden base that you're muling heavily. Scans now coming down for kauP. Does get a full read, but sees that GoOdy, as expected, going mech, has secured up another command center. But it's very easy for kauP to assume that this is the 3rd CC. In which case he'll sit there and go, I I am far ahead with this after I sniped off your previous attempt to make an additional command center. Little does he know that he's actually down in the SCV count and down in the base count. Another scan comes through. kauP continuing to be aggressive where possible. Ideally wanting to get some more damage done if he can, but has to be relatively careful when he pushes in just because of the high ground advantage GoOdy has available to him. So with all of this, kauP has got himself into a spot where he can continually deny what he thinks is the third base of GoOdy. Simply because if he tries to move down, he'd have to bring units to get into a defensive spot, but the ramp has been completely sealed off by kauP. While GoOdy does have a sizable amount of units, it would be somewhat suicide trying to move down there this early on. Scout has come through from kauP, now identified that base to the bottom right. And with this, that scout gives kauP plenty of time to go and pick off that base. But GoOdy going on the aggressive now. A good concave from kauP, but the tanks reigning supreme for GoOdy. Slaughters a lot of those units, and kauP has to back away. GoOdy now going to secure up his fourth base, but his third, the hidden one to the bottom right, is gonna get taken out pretty much undefended and undefendable. GoOdy, however, though, continuing forward, dealing again very nicely with kauP's army, and still the damage keeps coming through. GoOdy with nice momentum behind him, pressuring in, knowing his tank count vastly superior, and also knowing that his big advantage of the early game is getting taken down. kauP looking for any way that he can try and bring this back, but actually loses a tank in the process there, which leaves him with very little to defend. GoOdy gonna be able to start closing in this vice up against the third base. Mass scans on both sides, but the 30 plus army supply advantage is fairly huge for GoOdy. His tank count monstrous compared to that of kauP's, and kauP doesn't really have anything in response to this. He's frantically trying to tease these marauders in to pick off the odd tank, but there just isn't anything that he can do right now. His third base inevitably going to fall, and all he can do is back it away to safety. kauP managing to take out the fourth of GoOdy, or the third of GoOdy, but GoOdy already got his fourth up, still a base up on his opponent, and therefore having a much more solid economy, and more importantly access to those gases again, which really will make the difference when you're going back. Vikings providing vision for the siege tanks, and also working away at this third orbit command of kauP. The tanks slowly edging forward, and from this position are able to shell up into the main. The ramp somewhat unapproachable, and that's why we're seeing kauP not being able to retreat up there in order to get back. These tanks have fairly good range into the main base, picking a few production structures off, and kauP, knowing that he is basically on death's door, has to go for a bold move. He's gonna counterattack in the hope that GoOdy doesn't have anything back at home, but he does, and with that scan, GG's out immediately, knowing that there was no option, and GoOdy advances forward into the winner's game.